Timbaland has now become the strategic advisor for AI music company Suno. ABBA, Radiohead, The Cure signed an AI protest letter. The lack of barrier to entry to become a creator has changed. Outcome of these lawsuits is going to so heavily impact. On this channel, we cover all things music business, and about 4 months ago, the major record labels all came together because they have this new strategy where they sue other businesses. And we've covered this with, 600 million plus lawsuit against Wayback Machine. So they're just picking out companies, they're trying to identify copyright infringement. And I'm curious that with these lawsuits now against Udio and Suno, AI music makers, that they're doing something very similar. Now, we have read the complaint. We've also read the answer for both of these lawsuits, and we have an update today. Now, the update actually has to do with Timbaland. Now, if you guys remember, when we spoke about this, we mentioned that Timbaland was an investor with Suno. And I remember, my ears kind of perking up to this. I've been a fan of his. I checked out his autobiography. He just has an incredible story. He's a great producer. So this is from Billboard. Timbaland has now become the strategic advisor for AI music company Suno. Grammy Award-winning Timbaland has taken on a new role, right? And so an AI company, Suno, that generates full songs at the click of a button. News of the deal comes 4 months after the 3 major music companies collectively sued Suno and its competitor Udio for alleged infringement of their copyright sound recording and they said, we thought essentially the copyright infringement was at an unimaginable scale. And so now what was curious to me is that with this announcement that Timbaland is becoming not just I've been following him, right? And so we're going to look at some of his social media, but he is now not just the spokesperson, but he is now the creative director, right, for Suno, which I think is just really interesting. And he's going to be premiering his song Love Again exclusively on Suno's platform. And this is what he says. Let me show you this clip that he put up of what he's doing, because he's like, hey guys, you want $100,000? So he's doing quite the push on this. Let's check it out.
What's up? This Timbo the King. And guess what? I partnered with Suno for a remix contest. My single, Love Again. Here's the kicker. I'm giving away $100,000 in prizes for this contest.
And then he goes on to say that he's going to potentially release some of his favorite remixes. So he's really going in on this. So I'm just so curious with Timbaland's perspective, because as you guys know, we love these platforms. They're amazing, the capabilities of what they can already do, what they're going to be able to do. But obviously there's been resistance. And we'll talk about some of that new resistance that's come up through actual protests from musicians who are just so, and what some people will call it as anti-technology, of just being no, this is going to essentially ruin music. So in any case, but he is now, essentially the spokesperson here. So let's take a quick look at the original complaint. And we went through this in detail. If you want to check that out, please do. It's on this channel, but let me show you. Again, this is the Suno complaint from the major record labels against Suno. So in the complaint, they state, the basic point is that Suno's model requires a vast corpus of sound recordings in order to output synthetic music that are convincing imitations of human music. Suno's corpus includes the body of recorded music that people listen to in their everyday lives. Because of their sheer popularity and exposure, the copyrighted recordings in this, they basically say our catalog is the copyrighted recordings. So the copyrighted recordings had to be included with Suno's training for data for Suno's model to be successful at creating the desired human sounding outputs. So in other words, the complaint went on to say that, what they believed at the time, because they go, we don't know what Suno and Udio has used to train its AI data set. And they go, because we think what they used is our music. And it's because, and then they go through and give a very, 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 very long list of all the songs that they were able to get these platforms to replicate, right? They go quite literally. They've replicated almost exactly our songs. And so they go, we're not even claiming that there was direct copyright infringement in that there was sampling, right? They're going, we're not saying that they stole our Michael Jackson song and sampled it and put it into new music. What they're saying is that you used our music without authorization to train the AI. And by doing that, you should have licensed it. And what's been interesting, we've interviewed, at least one AI company on this channel. So Ben Jordan, who is a co-owner in that platform, and we talked about it. And just to be so what do you use to train your AI. And so they kind of shared, they go, no, we are kind of ethically sourcing our AI because we get singers to come in, because what they do is, they have the singers come in and they will lend their vocals, and then the AI trains from the singers to then create new top lines for people who want to use them for the productions. And their app is called Voice Swap. And so we talk about with, some companies being like, we're really aware of this. And we go, copyright is not clear on this. And that's what these lawsuits and the outcome of these lawsuits is going to so heavily impact. Back to what this is. So we have the record label saying if this is copyright infringement, we think that you should have paid us a licensing fee. Now, here's a nuance that I really want to focus on. And I didn't talk about this on the last go around, which is if the record labels are saying you are imitating us, and we know that to a degree, it's a moving target with copyright. We know that with copyright, we can learn and be inspired by, but if you're inspired too much and you take the melody and it's too close to the other melody that you were inspired by, you can get sued for copyright infringement and you might lose. A Music Attorney is your #1 legal resource for artists, producers, and record labels. Get contract templates, one-on-one legal advice, free master classes, and everything you need for your music business. Go to topmusicattorney.com. There's a factual analysis, and I go, well, one thing that we haven't really talked about is kind of the expression itself, the cadence, the spacing between the phrasing, like these things that only the human creators could have come up with, that now the AI is imitating, that now the AI is replicating, okay? And so that's something that I want to focus on for purposes of what we're going to look at. So I'll go back to Timbaland now, and I was kind of scrubbing through, and I'm taking a look just to kind of see, what has he shared on his socials, and something stood out to me. Let me see if I can find it right here.
Hold on. How did that thing know how to space? I don't think it's saying lyrics yet, right?
No, I think it's just tones.
Like
it's just tones.
So it detects cadence. How did it get the cadence?
So he goes, this is like so amazing. This is so amazing. Because, at his level, he knows why those little things make such a big difference with music. And so the argument is that there are aspects of this that the AI is now recreating. It's not just learning the patterns, right? And what made the great hit songs in the first place. And they go, well, you shouldn't have done that anyway, right? Because if you were going to have a group of songwriters sit there and listen to the music, and they're going to take inspiration from, more than likely, you probably are going to consider those derivative works. You probably would have needed to license them. So why should the AI be allowed to do this? And in fact, do it actually much better than just, a human sitting there. I go to now, what I have heard in the breaths. Like there's all these very nuanced things, and I go, that's interesting to me. Did it get its breaths, its cadence, intentionality of the vocal fry, and all of this stuff because it learned it from someone else's music? So they don't talk about that in the complaint, but I go, that's something for me as a creator that I know, like deep down in my soul, that would have been replicated more than likely. So now let's go back because we also have an answer. All right, so meaning Suno answered. And we went through this again in full detail. Some of the highlights. Here we go. This is on page 2. So in the answer, they go, these genres like opera, jazz, rap music are not something that anyone owns. Our intellectual property laws have always been really careful to calibrate and avoid anyone monopolizing any form of artistic expression. So they just start with really broad statements. So look, pop, sonnets, no one gets to own genres of music. No one's arguing against that. That's fine. Notwithstanding those foundational freedoms, the plaintiffs, so the record labels in the lawsuit, seek to shut down Suno. They are a collection of the largest record labels in the world, which collectively dominate the music industry, which is true. They frame their concern as one about copies of their recordings made in the process of developing the technology. Now, in the complaint, I can assert to you, the record labels say, we don't know how the AI companies have done this because they have not told us. But we are assuming, and we believe this to be the case, that they have scoured the internet, because what they have told us is that, in public statements, they're like, we have accessed publicly accessible music. And they I don't know what that means, but it sounds like they kind of just went on Spotify. And they go, but in order to train the AI model as proficiently as it needs to be trained, and I've spoken with people who do app development using AI, and they've confirmed this with me, that the best way to do it is to give it actual audio files. right? So then what the record labels are claiming, they say, we believe that the AI companies went in, downloaded copies of our music, which, by the way, if you duplicate and make copies of the music without the copyright owner's authorization, that's copyright infringement. Done. Now it goes beyond that, and that's what they're saying, but they go, that's copyright infringement. And then from there, they train the AI, okay? And then the AI is going to go and now dilute the entire music market because now our original stuff is going to become less and less and less valuable. That's essentially their argument. So in response, in the answer, that's why they're addressing that. They're like, they frame it as copies of their recordings made in the process of developing technology. That is, copies never heard or seen by anyone. Okay, does that matter under copyright law? No. If you copy someone's stuff without their permission, right, might be copyright infringement. Made solely to analyze the sonic and stylistic patterns. And so when we were reading this, I'm like, it kind of sounds like you just admitted it. So they go, yeah, we made copies, never heard or seen by anyone, made solely to analyze the sonic and stylistic patterns of the universe of pre-existing musical expression. But what the major labels really don't want is competition. Okay, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, right? This is absolutely competition. Where Suno sees musicians, teachers, and everyday people using a new tool to create original music, the labels see a threat to their market share. Yeah, I mean, respectfully, you're damn right. The reality of what music is becoming and the lack of barrier to entry to become a creator and all that good stuff has changed. Everyone can agree to that. It's totally changed. And this is changing what it is for people who kind of more traditionally learned to play the piano and to play the cello and then to produce music. And now you're competing with people who can just input words and then have something produced. And I think that's totally fair to say. It doesn't mean it's not amazing and technology is incredible and all that good stuff. But I think that we can just be, have some common sense about it, right? So Suno, in the answer still, Suno will ultimately prevail in this litigation because the value of the copyright law embodies the values to incentivize the service of enabling expression of more ideas by more people. And that kind of goes like inherently to the copyright law, right? So, copyright law and fair use, and we'll talk about that in a sec, but the whole idea is to promote creativity, to promote science. From we want technology to continue evolving, that's their argument. They go, this is fair use because the law says that we can evolve creativity and science because it's a really good thing. And it leads to really good things often. These are what the drafters had in mind. They did come back, both of them, Suno and Udo, and they're like, yeah, we did it. But it's not copyright infringement. It's fair use. Now, just so you guys know, fair use is an exception, right? So you have copyrighted stuff, then there is infringement or a claim of infringement, right? So that you used it in a way that was done without permission that you should have gotten permission for. So that's when all this stuff happens. And then what can happen is under the Copyright Act for fair use says, well, you can infringe the copyright and it's actually okay under the law so long as it meets these different criteria. And we've talked about, for example, on this channel, I have fair use claims for stuff that I react to. So I use copyrighted music videos, I use copyrighted songs sometimes, all kinds of things for purposes of education. So under fair use, one of the exceptions would be for education. There's also commentary and criticism and parody. So what they're saying is that this would be an instance of fair use. And there's been no court. There's all kinds of lawsuits just like this with a similar set of facts, and no court has actually ruled either way on this, right? So we're all kind of holding our breath because this is going to be a huge deal. Moving on back to the answer. They go on, they explain, basically how Suno works. We know how it works, but I thought this was interesting. They go, in the design and implementation of its product, Suno has in fact conducted a sweeping set of guardrails to ensure that any given output, so meaning anything that is produced by Suno, will not resemble too closely a particular recording the model was exposed to in the training process. One of the things that we saw in the complaint was, again, just the laundry list of, they're like, look at the Mariah Carey songs that we were able to produce. And we had Jesse with Sync My Music. He was even noted in the lawsuit because he kind of, discovered this as well. He's like, I'm putting in these prompts and it's like literally spitting out popular songs. And he goes, I don't know if this is a glitch, I don't know, whatever. And so, the record labels obviously caught on as well. And so they included all this stuff in their complaint. And they go, well, I mean, here, at least in the response, they're like, well, we put in safeguards. So, I mean, again, they're not saying it's not doing that. They go, we are just telling it not to do that. And we're saying these safeguards should make it so that there really is no copyright infringement because nothing is too closely resembling. I'm like, what does that mean? Again, so I go back to just kind of my, analogy of just as a copyright attorney. And when we very much make these arguments about if we know someone has had access to something that is copyrighted content, and we know that they were trying to make a song very similar to that thing that is owned by someone else, and they didn't make it not close enough, like the strength of this argument, I struggle with it. Okay. Because they go, we're trying to make it not sound too much. I'm like, how do you know? And so I go back to the things of like, what makes these songs amazing and prolific? And even for me as a singer, when I am in a session with my producer and we are reworking a sentence over and over and over, and like Billie Eilish, she's talked about this as well. She's like, when she's recording with her brother and they will sing one word 200 times because they're trying to get the exact right inflection. And so, my argument is, again, this is outside of the four corners of the complaint and the answer, but I think it's really important. I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on this as well, which is those nuances that makes a song special. The cracks in the voice, the particular EQ of that snare, that thing that we just obsess about for like 40 hours to get it right. And those are the things that I'm perking up to and listening to when I am hearing AI music, and I go, where'd you get that from? And so if that's one of the things that was imitated, but maybe it's not close enough, again, can we see at least the perspective here on the, if you are going to do it and you are going to train the AI and the AI is not going to do all those things that you slaved away to take a lot of time to, put into your music, should you get paid for that? Drop your comment down below. I'm curious. Okay. All right. So then the update. Besides Timbaland doing his thing, okay, and I'm excited to kind of get more of his perspective on this, we do have an update that, and I love Radiohead, I love The Cure, I love ABBA. So ABBA, or I should say the musicians from ABBA, Radiohead, The Cure, they all signed an AI protest letter against the unlicensed use of works. So musicians from these different groups have joined actors and authors in signing a protest letter against the mining of their artistry to build artificial intelligence tools. Thousands of artists signed the letter released Tuesday, the latest public warning about AI tools that can spit out synthetic images, music, and writing after being trained on huge troves of human-made work. So we've seen lots of lawsuits about this. People are up in arms in some respects, and other people are like, you're so anti-technology. And let me just share this, guys. Again, as a copyright attorney, I have a couple cases right now, one of which we have spent the last year in discovery. I'm sitting there deposing a lot of different people and talking about their access to our clients' copyrighted content. How much access did they have, right? Were they looking at it when they were making their new thing? Did they reference it? Did they intentionally include aspects of it into the thing that we are asserting they created to rip off our clients' pre-existing copyrighted material? And having gone through this analysis and just been like, man, like what happens in these cases with Suno and Udio is going to be massive, because it's kind of like there's almost a blind eye to AI. And just being like, well, for someone who actually is like, I'm like, here's a human-made thing, here's a new human-made thing, and I think they ripped it off, and they're saying, we just took inspiration from it. We had safeguards to make sure that it wasn't too close to the original, literally, arguments that we're fighting against. And so then I go, okay, so does that mean that the stuff that we make now as creators of any kind, whether it's music or courses or videos or whatever it is, really isn't valuable anymore? Because if that's the argument, if that's what we're going to say, and we're like, no, we can do something, as long as it's just kind of like imitating, it's not really it, it's no big deal. Let's bring Mr. Orko on in.
I definitely have some thoughts about this. Timbaland partnering up with Suno, and will.i.am I think he's doing what Udio. And the thing of it is, these guys have already made their money. So this isn't like really an art decision or a creative decision. This is a money-making decision. You talk to Timbaland, you talk to will.i.am, well, maybe less will.i.am, because will.i.am and Black Eyed Peas and stuff that he does is like, it feels like it's like 60% interpolation or sampling anyway. So for will.i.am, I can see the argument of it's an easier way for me to like sample. Timbaland in his videos, it feels like he's just doing commercials for Suno because now he has a vested interest in it. He might use it because it's easier and he wants to free up his time from sitting there and just writing stuff the way that he did. Now, I'm not against AI. I've gone back and forth on this channel about how I feel about it. I'm either terrified of it. I mean, we've already seen what it's done. We've already seen like a little bit of the impact AI phenomenon has had on mixing, mastering, how it has effect on the sync licensing aspect of things. But when it comes to music, I feel like AI is just kind of like a jukebox, if I can use that analogy. So it's like, before I used to go like you're typing in a Google prompt and you're getting a song. A lot of people have the argument, well, I'm sitting there and I'm training on music my whole life. And so what's the difference between of that and AI? AI is just faster. Well, if you are listening and being inspired by music your entire life, you still have to develop some kind of skill and write and create something that's coming from you. Whereas AI, it's like a jukebox. You're doing a song request. I need a dark pop song that has, that sounds like Nine Inch Nails. And here are some lyrics that I'm putting in and create the whole thing. And then now I'm an artist. You're a curator, a music curator, I feel like, more than you are an artist. I also hear the argument of, so this is just saving me money because I would just go out and hire somebody that was trained and knows all this stuff and is a professional musician as a songwriter to come in and help me write my song. So this is just cutting out that middleman and this is cheaper. I don't want to clear samples. So I'm using AI and I'm sampling it and then I'm using it. Like, I think I have a little less problem with that argument. I'm speaking more to these artists that we're seeing pop up on Spotify. They're taking human creatives royalties away because they're flooding the market because of the way that Spotify pays artists and it's just solely generated AI. The argument where labels are against these companies, I truly think that yes, it is. They want to protect all their intellectual property and the things that we're doing. But I also think it's because all these companies have their own AI that they're developing because we've already covered it on this channel where some of these big artist contracts, they're going to have clauses in their contracts for them to be trained for the label. So the label will kind of own their voice that they can opt into. I think it's just the competition aspect of it.
I'm a little weighted in my opinion on this right now in the present moment, just because of, this particular case that I'm heavily involved with. I'm really curious of this because again, like I'm very much a fan of AI. I think it's so cool, the stuff that we are seeing. And so it's interesting to see this from the legal perspective. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. Drop a comment down below. I'm Top Music Attorney. I'll see you on the next one.